Okay. Okay, guys, we are live. Welcome to our Facebook family and everyone else who's joined us on Instagram and YouTube. I am attorney Lakisha Dean, as you all may know, and I'm so happy to be sitting here with Kelly Thomas and Nakoven Norman. And as you know, we are so happy to come together to talk about something that we find is very important. We're talking about special education in New Jersey. And we're actually trying to pay it forward to give parents and families and students information about this very important area. Because as we know, education is so important and integral to developing our families, leaving a legacy. And for children that have certain disabilities when it comes to education or have special needs when it comes to education, we want to make sure that their needs are met and that parents understand exactly what they need to do and how to advocate for their children. So we're having a webinar on November 4th, and the theme of it is overcome, meaning overcome the stigma of special education, understand special education in New Jersey so that you can effectively advocate for your children. So tonight, we're just giving you a sneak peek about what we're going to talk about at the webinar. But first, we want to start off and give a quick introduction of everyone and just talk about personally why this is so important to us. So we will start off with you, Kelly. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So my name is Kelly Thomas. I am a nonprofit founder, Girls Like You, Inc. Actually started my nonprofit about 9 years ago. Working with young ladies in juvenile detention, sometimes just at-risk youth. I found that a lot of them had IEPs. A lot of them were classified as special education. So their behaviors kind of turned into their lifestyle or their life. You know, their life became, okay, I'm acting out in school because I'm not understanding, or however that played out, there was a correlation between the two. So I started working in special education about 5 years ago as an ABA therapist. I wanted to go in as a teacher's assistant, but I started to see that working with those children individually that had IEPs on social skills, speech, you know, different things that we work on them individually with would help them more, would be more influential to them. So that's kind of where I am with this. I wanted to do this to give parents and community members more information on special education from start to finish, you know, so we won't have that lasting stigma against young people that are in special education. So that is my why.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I definitely appreciate that. And that stigma is something that's really huge, and it's kind of why I'm doing this too. But Nakoven, tell us a little bit about you.
Okay. Well, first of all, hello, Lakisha. Hi, Kelly. I'm glad to be here with both of you. And hi to your universe too, as well. So this is very exciting for me. And this is very great, interesting, great, because this is my life work. Let me see. I am an educator, and I am a psychologist. And I've been doing this, I want to say, since 1997. You're going to have to do the math for me, how many years. I don't really want to hear how many years I've been doing it. But because it kind of makes me feel old. I see the little gray in my beard now. But what it is, education was a vehicle. Education was a vehicle for me and for my family to propel us to where we are now. And that is necessary. It's a necessary vehicle. And we need to make sure that everyone has this vehicle, even the most vulnerable. Here's the thing. All kids can learn. All kids are capable and able to learn. What we have to do is just to figure out how to get them to there. So we have to create the vehicles to get them to moving from ignorance to education, moving from um, non-attainment to attainment. And we know what we're doing is not just affecting that particular individual, but affecting lives. So this is what why I'm here. I'm here because this is my methodology on changing lives, to do my part in shaping the world for the betterment of everyone, especially when you're dealing with the most vulnerable, or the most, or not the ideal, or not the cookie color of our society. So that's why I'm here. And part of that is to help parents to understand that they have options, they have a choice, they have rights, and to further equip them to use them. Okay. And not only just to use them to advocate, but to use them to help make their kids' school a special place. So I'm a believer in public education. I believe in the system. Help me, help my family, help change our family trajectory in life. We can do the work together to help build better systems. So I am an educator. I'm a psychologist, and I'm also the coordinator, managing coordinator for a company called Puzzles Education Services. And what we do is we partner with parents, we partner with schools, we partner with community leaders, lawyers such as yourself, and community and boards members, and advocates such as you too, Kelly, and we help make school a better place for all our students. So that's why I'm here.
Yeah, well, I can appreciate that. And I like that you even said partnership, because I think that's important to help bridge that gap for our students. But when I mentioned earlier, we were talking about stigma. I think it's important that we really talk about that in overcoming that. And I can tell you personally, like I've gone through the public school system and I know what it's done for me. My children are now a part of it. But I think where this area of law is really important for me is that my husband actually was considered a special ed student growing up. And we went to school in the New York public school system. And I think there are a lot of people have the same story, where because he got into a fight, I think in a small Catholic school, he was kicked out of that school. And then when he entered public school, they placed him in special education. And it wasn't based on how bright he was, it wasn't based on his academic performance, but just because of that one behavior issue, he was placed in special ed. And it went from middle school all the way through high school. And when we were in high school, it was, and I'm hoping that schools are not this way anymore, but when we were in high school, our school had wings. It was the north, east, south, west wing. Special ed students were like in one wing on the first floor. They didn't move classrooms. They were maybe walked from one classroom to another. They were totally segregated from the rest of the population. And there were students in there who were at different academic levels. So even though my husband was not academically challenged, he was in a classroom where his needs really were not met. His academic needs were not met at all. And for him to have to go through that for 4 years, more than 4 years, but his entire high school experience was really traumatic. I have to say it was really traumatic. And I'm really happy to say that now he's a chiropractor, so he was able to break through that and still go on and get, further degrees. But honestly, the stigma, I believe, is still there. There's still something in the back of his mind where before he does anything, it's like, do I really deserve this? And if I see him struggle with that, I can only imagine what other students have to go through who may not have the support of their teachers, who may not have parents who really understand the system, and who may not have the support of partners like, you, Kelly, and I, the partnership that we're forming. So I think this webinar is going to be really important, really important. Okay. So with that being said, we are going to actually be coming to you live every week until the webinar. So for the next 3 weeks, we're going to come to you live just to kind of get you ready, get ourselves ready for this webinar, because quite frankly, and Kelly and I have said this, I don't think one webinar is going to be enough to cover everything that we really want to convey to you guys. So we're just going to give you a little sneak peek as to what's going to be covered in that webinar. So tonight we're going to focus with Nicole will explain to us really what special ed really is. What does it mean, special education in New Jersey? And we just want to have a conversation with you guys about that. So if you have any questions, feel free to jump in. I have it here. I can certainly try to answer your questions as we go through this live. But I'm going to leave this up to Nicole and let him take it away.
Awesome. Oof. All right. So let's go. So where do we start at? Well, I guess maybe we could start with the story of your husband. I mean, where he went through as far as special education. And when we talk about special education, it did not just start from, I guess, the court case and the mandates. It has a history. Everything has a history in this country, and it has a history. And the history of so it's a matter of looking at people with disabilities and needs. And unfortunately, the history of dealing with individuals with special needs or handicaps or disability was problematic. And what happened was they were shunned, they were isolated, they was punished. They were, for the most part, they was considered to be the refuge of society. There's a word, and it's a horrible word. You probably heard of the word like inept, or being socially inept, or socially
Awkward.
It's almost kind of something withdrawal and awkward. And unfortunately, if a person presents themselves, whether it was behavioral, physical, mental, they was looked as being an invalid. That was the word I was looking for, an invalid. It was looked as being part of that refuge. And because of that, they was pushed away. They was pushed away from in society. They was punished. They was executed. They was institutionalized because they were seen as less than. That, unfortunately, is their fault. It's their family's fault. And unfortunately, throughout the decades, we still had to shake that. Even with the rulings in court cases, we still had to shake that particular stigma, that the reason why you are the way you are because it's your fault. Okay. So what happened? There was laws that came about. There was rules that came about. But what it was about is now stop looking at these people as the invalid of society or the non-valid of society, and look at them as the individual who has needs, and those needs to be addressed. So when you think about special education, what it is a practice of educating students in a way that provides accommodation that address their individual differences, their disabilities, and their special needs. Okay, so those are 3 words you kind of like as part of vocabulary for anybody: individual difference, disability, and special needs. So let's look at that. So what are we talking about? When individual differences, we're talking about the way an individual difference in behavior, ability, or process. Just because this person is different, it doesn't mean that they're bad. And again, that's a society that we have in the beginning that we had to start to shake. And disabilities, it doesn't mean that person is invalid. It means that this person, in order for them to actually interact with the world around them, they need a degree of support or some activities or things to help them effectively do that. And again, special needs. It's those needs that unfortunately makes that person different and makes that person have a little bit of a struggle in interacting as non-disabled people. So that's what we're talking about when we talk about special education. And special education, it's all about the individual and their needs. Well,
can I ask a quick
how did
question?
it come about? Sure.
So is
Uh-oh.
that
Do it
based
again.
then on the premise that everybody learns differently, right? Is that our schools, and I know Kelly, you're actually in the schools, so our schools, especially within special education, recognizing that children learn differently. Some learn by looking, reading, some learn by listening to, music or what have you to help enhance their learning. Does special education take that into consideration?
Okay. Can you hear me? Because you are
Yeah,
breaking up a little
you were
bit.
frozen for a minute, but we can hear you now.
Okay. All right. Well, one of the things I'm happy to say is, and unfortunately, this did not happen immediately. This took over time. It had to develop over the decades, not years, but the decades. When special an act, that was some of the past practices of the whole punishment and isolation of those kids. But since then, there has been enactments and there has been a new way of looking at educating kids, a new way of looking at pedagogy. So you hear certain things as multimodal approach, meaning that that an effective way to teach everybody is to teach people according to their strength. So I'm almost looking at a strength-based way of educating kids. Then I also talked about a different how to instruct and teach them in other ways that's kind of deviate from the traditional lecture format. As a matter of a big buzzword in public schools today is differentiated education, differentiated instruction. And what it basically boils down to is using small groups to teach kids on how they learn best. So one of the things I tell parents all the time and work with parents, even with a person that has a disability, because one having a disability doesn't necessarily mean that that person needs special education. That if I'm disabled and I need help, then they should help me. But if I need help, that doesn't mean I'm disabled. You understand that? That's a play on
Right. No, I
words that I do all the time at meetings. And a lot of times we have kids who come to, or even individuals who come to us, and they're seeking help and seeking ways to better learn or get more of a grasp of the instruction. And we're saying, and they may not need the service of special education, they just need help. So what I'm happy about, and this is what parents got to make sure they're very rigid and very vigilant on doing, is to making sure that their school system has a program that can make a meaningful educational experience for not only kids who have special needs, but also kids who just simply need help. There's processes, there's the
And I just,
intervention. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, no, I just want to acknowledge that we have, there's a Cecilia who's joined us now, and she's commenting about her experience here. So I just want to acknowledge that she's here with us, and that her comment is kind of on point with what you're saying. They just put them in resource room and don't load the resource room with resources. So, if you can speak to that, that would be helpful, because she's also talking about how intimidating it is to go to court, which Cecilia, we're certainly going to address later on. That's something that I'll be talking about during the webinar and another Facebook Live. But I think, Nicole, if you could touch on that, that'd be really helpful.
Matter of fact, I'll touch on that directly. Yes, I think sometimes the easy answer is special education, because unfortunately, a lot of times with people, what special education is for a lot of people in general, educators and parents alike, is a way to make sure their child's not going to struggle and that they will, and almost a guarantee to pass. And that's not what's supposed to be like. When one is qualified for those services, you only qualify 3 years at a time. Now, that can be, and as often is, it can be renewed. But the hope is that within that 3 year time slot, that you can build that 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 a child will get the interventions that they need, the services that they need. Build whatever the is, and over that 3-year time can be lessened and lower, so they can go on to the general education program as their non-disabled peers. That's the goal. The goal is that though you have a disability, doesn't necessarily mean that you need special education. And if we build what we need to as a school district, if we build what we need to for those kids, they won't have to have it. So here's the thing, though. So what do we do when you have children who are just thrown into resource rooms or easily thrown into special education? That's when it comes to those parent groups. You got parent groups, you got the PTAs, you got board members that live in your community. You have the phone numbers of the principal, your curriculum person, your superintendent, and they need to start being challenged on how are you making an effective education programming for kids who doesn't need special education. What are you doing with that? And here's the words that I like for parents to bring up, always mention. What are your research-based programming? Say that 2 more times. Research-based programming. Research-based programming that you're using to help curb the number of children going to special education, especially our little Black boys. What are those research-based programming that you're using to help mitigate some of the issues that's going on as far as learning, especially if you are a Title I school, and if you think about Title I schools, usually when there's a higher number of children who are receiving reduced lunch, free or reduced lunch, and if their free and reduced lunch kind of outweighs the number of kids who are not, then you're definitely a Title I school. Title I school is all about reading, writing, and math, and making sure that there's some type of research-based programs to help mitigate children who are struggling with those needs. Now, how districts get away with that or not do it is because they don't have an effective parent group to make sure they do it. Here's my thing. I said this to a few parents just over the years. We're talking about 20 plus years. Don't do the math for me. It's 20 plus years. Good school districts come from good communities, and good communities are made by the members of that community, making sure things are good.
Well said. Well said. And I think that's going to be like what we want to do too, is provide people with resources. Like you just mentioned, what has to be in place in the community in order to really effectively make this work. So I think that's something we definitely will touch on in the webinar. And I just want to go back to another comment, and this kind of brings you into this, Kelly. Cecilia's talking about she says her daughter had a loaded 504 plan that she aggressively advocated, but she had modifications, but not an IEP. And I know we're not going to give too much of that away right now, because that's really going to be the topic of what you're going to talk about, right, Kelly? But can you speak to some of this that Nicoven has been saying and Cecilia's concerns?
Well, I definitely wanted to just say this, based off of what Nicoven has been saying, is, our position is to work ourselves out of our jobs. Okay, we're not here to stay. And I that's why it's so important for me to be connected with the parent, so they know, I want you to learn these techniques and these strategies and get comfortable with them, because you don't want to rely on any system, to educate your child. So I just wanted to say that, because I think it's very important. As much as I love my job, I look forward to seeing the progress, meeting the goals, and that child can move into general ed or an inclusive classroom at the least. The second part about the 504, and of course, not to give too much info away, but it's separate than the IEP. It's a separate plan. And like the COVID said, the child has to qualify for that, for either of those. So you said Cecilia's daughter has a 504 and she wants the IEP. So the 504 gives modifications. Am I correct, Lakoven? That gives modifications.
Okay.
Right. Okay. So in the IEP is more, it is an individualized plan. So I just want to encourage parents again, like Nicole said, do your research with the school district that you're in the programs that they use. And also don't get anxious about whether or not your child can perform with those modifications. Believe that your child can, work with them to be able to work with those modifications. And I know IEP, like you said, it would be easier. It makes the child struggle less, but a challenge is great for them as well. It's very important that people not look at children in special ed as if they're not capable, because that's the first thing they need before anything else is to be believed in. So I want to encourage Cecilia to, it's okay for your daughter to be challenged. And there's people that can support you and support your daughter with those challenges. But first thing you have to do is just believe that she can.
And she says that she does have an IEP now, but she feels she's getting less support under the IEP than she is in the 504. So it might be, Cecilia, we hope that you join us and just kind of follow us through this process so that we can kind of clarify this for you. But Nicole, when you wanted to jump in?
Yeah, because let me piggyback on that. All right, there is, with some exceptions, you can get almost as much support with a 504 plan, which is a legal document that is also guaranteed by federal law, as well as IEPs, and is guaranteed under civil rights, that you can get under an IEP. You can get accommodations, you can get tutoring, you can get some of the related service and supports. You can get quite a few things. So don't think of a 504 plan. And you think about it, it's called the Section 504 plan under Rehabilitation Act of 1974. So don't think of the 504 plan as the IEP light. No, it's not. It's very heavy. It's a heavy document that has enforceable components and tools. So if your child is getting that, what it's essentially saying is that they are a person that has education, that has needs and need access to education or to the environment, but academics is not that much of a struggle for them. Okay, with the necessary needs and the necessary interventions, they can perform in the general education classroom as well as their non-disabled peers. And that's what we look for all our students, to perform in the general education classroom like non-disabled peers. Yes. So the rule is to challenge your district and then call people like myself, call people like Kelly, call people like Lakisha, and say, and ask them, hey, we did the research already. We got the research. And we know the questions to ask. And if they're not answering the question, then that's when you ask us to help you and provide some resources and support, so you can go in there fully armed and go in there saying, hey, I'm a partner in this, and I'm going to help you be a better school for not only my child, but all my children's friends and all my children's schoolmates.
It's such a good point. And I just want to follow up with something that Cecilia brought up too, is funding. How does funding relate to all this? Because it seems that she has the impression that the school wanted to provide one versus the other because of funding. Can either of you talk about how funding relates to all of this?
Okay. What do you want to talk about it, Kelly? Because you want to talk about it, or?
The subject of funding is, I would say for Cecilia to know her district and to know more specifics before I would speak on funding. I know, well, again, I would just a personal conversation about that, because I think in the COVID, I don't know if you agree, but it does depend on a district and how they distribute their funds and the statistics. There's a few things to consider when talking about funding.
Okay. Well, and also just to add to that as well, when we talk about Section 504s and IEPs, they're two separate programs. The Section 504 plan is all under general education, so it comes out of general education funds, the general education expenditures, whereas the IEP and the special education does come with the additional funds, and that comes out of special education funds. So sometimes you kind of can get into a sticky wiki with that. Whereas school district, it's kind of more advantageous to have, if a child has special needs, to have them under the special education umbrella, because just the separate funds that's used to deal with that, especially if that child requires more services and more aid. There's a thing called extraordinary aid that helps compensate when district has to go above and beyond the regular student expenditure for those kids. So funding does play into it comes in consideration, but there's also all types of, I'm a former director, and I remember doing grants and writing grants for this and that as well. So when you think about what school districts collect, they do collect tax dollars from you, the citizen, but they also get quite a few other funding as far as Title I, don't let me get confused in the titles, but all these different also sources that help them provide. But when it comes to education, that really has nothing to do with you. So in the state of New Jersey, there's a couple things that plays out that follows those rules in the state of New Jersey. Number one, least restricted environment, which means basically your child needs to be educated in the most most least restricted environment, or the most that mostly mimics your general education peer, their general education, their non-disabled peers. And of course, general education. That's number one. The other one, and please, whatever you do, because a lot of districts try to get away from this because they don't want to be held to it. But the other one is this. It's called FAPE, free and appropriate public education. All right, so that means if your child, we don't need equal, we need equity. We need for them to have what they need to be able to have full access to education.
Can you say that one more time? Because I think that's really important. Just say that again.
Okay. FAPE, free, appropriate public education. Free, appropriate public education. Who is it free to? You, the parent. And what is guaranteed? That is appropriate for your particular child. And what is going to happen in the public education realm? So that means that if your child, it's not a matter of equality, it's a matter of equity. They need to have what they need to be able to make the gains that any other students can make. So that's the whole level playing ground. So if your child needs an FM trainer, or because they have some auditory processing issues, then the school districts is mandated by the state, by the feds, to give them that, because that's what is appropriate. That's what they need to have an appropriate access to public education. So don't get in the weeds about the funding at all. You need to get into the weeds that this is my child. They need a public education, and it's regardless of their individual difference. It's regardless of their disabilities, and it's regardless of their special needs. They need a free and appropriate public education for them.
Mm-hmm. And I just want to add to that, the reason why funding is such a sticky subject is because there are children with IEPs who need certain things. And forgive me, I don't know the technical term for the boards, for an example, for children who are nonverbal and they're able to spell out everything on those boards that they're able to carry around and kind of talk to you through. I've been in a district before that did not provide that, and funding came up, so Again, sometimes I don't have access to the parent to say, hey, that part doesn't matter to you. That doesn't matter to you. This is what he needs. So that's what he should be receiving. And then they kind of circle back to the funding thing. So I try to stay away from that conversation because it really, like you said, it really depends on the district. It depends on who's in charge or what they see fit. As far as the parent is concerned, this is what your child needs.
Right.
So you don't have to worry about who supplies it.
Okay. And you're right. And Lakisha, Kelly, I can go into so many case laws and do rules and everything. And this and that. I know we have a time limit because we're supposed to give everybody a little tease and a taste of it. But let me say one more thing. One more thing, and it's very important. It used to be in the state of New Jersey and across America, as a matter of fact, we used to have this term called de minimis. You know, now all we had to do is show education gain. It doesn't have to be meaningful, but all we need to do was just show just a little bit of educational gain. So if your child is 13 years old and they read on a kindergarten level, and we can say, well, it was reading on a kindergarten level month September, but now we got them on a kindergarten level month January. We did our job as far as special education, as far as we show gain. But guess what? The Supreme Court says that's unconstitutional. You can't do that. You are not allowed to use the minimus. You need to have an equitable. They should be able to make the gains necessary to make that any other child makes. So you can't use the minimus. You can't just give them. We used to say all we need to do is give you the Chevy. We don't have to give you the Porsche. But now they have to give you the Porsche.
Absolutely.
So what it boils down to, I hate to say, sometimes you can be cruel, you can be mean with this, but the fact of the matter is these school districts, the state of New Jersey and any other state as well, because I mean, these rules follow from state to state. The school districts, you, the parents in the community, needs to figure it out. We have these kids in these communities. They need these services. They have a right to them. They need them to make it so they can improve their family, improve their lives and everything. We have to figure out and get them. We're in the business to educate kids, no matter what. Say anything else? Well, we don't have the money to give your kid an appropriate public education. We're just going to waste their time. That's inappropriate.
That's unacceptable. That should be unacceptable. Yeah, and that's why we're here. That's why we're doing this, to let parents know. Because I think after everything you and Kelly have talked about tonight, it's what I'm hearing is that parents need to understand what their rights are in order to be able to really advocate, regardless of your school district, regardless of your child's issues, regardless of what that school is telling you. The parent has to understand.
Indeed.
Parent, not only they have their rights, the child has rights, and that's the part that always, we miss that part, that this child has rights. To be a part of this process. I mean, we can explain it on any level to that child, what's happening with them and all of that. But the school district has their responsibility. I love to focus with the parents because I think as soon as you hear special ed, you hear failing, you hear attention problem, raise their hand to it. I mean, anytime you hear something like that, the anxiety level goes up. So, I love to talk to parents about that. Come on, people have bad days, did he get enough sleep? And in my position, I start from the top. Did he eat, get enough sleep? What kind of mood is the child in? And if you have that connection with the parent, you can say that. Because like you said, a bad mood could turn into a classification.
Unfortunately, yes.
That's the reality of it. So the school district has their responsibility by law. Parents need to know what that responsibility is, and then kind of be relieved that this is their responsibility and these are mine. You know what I mean? And don't get worked up over what your child did that day, or even if they're in special ed and they had a bad day, they are entitled to that bad day, just like we are entitled to bad days. So, and I could go on and on about that portion of it because I think when we miss the child's rights, the way the child feels about it, asking the child, you know, how comfortable they are doing certain things. One of the things I do constantly is ask kids, nonverbal, verbal. Can I sit next to you? Can I hold your hand? You know, the teacher might say, I want their hands held and I want this and that, but I still talk to that child and say, well, how do you feel about that? You know, and I don't care what the answer is, they're included. So,
Right.
and I could go on and on about it, but I just want to say that too. I know Cecilia is on the line and she sounds concerned. We're here for that. We're here for every angle of that.
Yeah, and I thank you for that, Kelly, because it sounds like you're saying meet the children where they are and treat them with respect.
Yes,
Right.
definitely. That's my priority.
Yeah.
And can I add just one thing here? When parents effectively advocate, the educators are happy, because what happens is their advocacy leads to changes and it makes their job easier. It makes their job, what we ask teachers to do, what we ask psychologists, social workers, learning consultants, principals to do, it's kind of hard to advocate from inside, but when parents are fully equipped and they say, oh no, this is what my child needs, and I'm not going to stop until my child gets it, that equips teachers, that equips schools to make sure that they can meet the needs, and they're happy. So a lot of times you might have these puppy dog eyes of educators looking at parents and say, I wish you do what you need to do to fight to get what your child needs, because if you do, it can make all our lives better. So, and they want to do a good job. So when we can't, so parents, you can't sit down. And it's, a lot of times it's phone calls. And it's a partnership, it's a team, it's something that we all have to work together to do. And when parents are a crucial part of that partnership, they're a crucial part of that partnership anyway, but when they're fully being responsive to their part, we have great schools for all kids, regardless of their special needs, regardless of their individual differences, and regardless of their disabilities. So that's another thing, just a little take home for you.
Yeah, thank you. And I think, gosh, there's so much to this that as both of you have said, we can go on and on about any minor subject that we've been talking about here tonight. But I thank you guys for all this information. I mean, I'm learning from you, so I appreciate that. And I'm sure that this is going to do so much for all the parents and the students out there, and even some of the teachers and administrators who want to join in and learn about this. So Nicole, if you want to just give us a quick summary about what you think are three of the most important things that you brought up tonight, just to kind of take us home.
Sure. Okay. So there are some things that, all right, number one is all about the individual. It's all about the individual and their needs. And one of the things that they need is free and appropriate public education, guaranteed by laws, guaranteed by the laws, guaranteed by the state, and most states that you live in. Okay, especially in the state of New Jersey. Number two is, let me see. Number two is that that you have rights. You have rights. And part of your right is you have a right to participate. You are a partnership in the system. You are the person, the school district, your child, the school district, and all their friends need you. And number three, that how we got here took some time and took work, and that work is still happening and still needs to happen, and still getting done. But you have, and just like the people, the educators before us, the advocates before us, the parents before us, they all did the work. This is the time that we have to do our work too. Okay, but I think mostly it's just vocabulary. Number one, FAPE, free and appropriate public education. Number two, you have you have rights in regards to their individual needs or individual I'm sorry, I got it written down here. Individual differences, disabilities, or special needs. And number 3,
This is work
Your
that's still
partner.
evolving, right?
partner. You are a
It's
partner.
not done. It's not going to be done. So we got to
You're a
keep it
partner.
together, right?
Right. Excellent.
Wow. Wow.
Right.
Well, I think that was awesome. I really thank you for that. And I am just so excited for what we have coming up next. Next Facebook Live is going to be, it's actually going to be on a Wednesday because our Kelly Thomas is being honored on Thursday. So we're excited about that because of the work that she does in the community. So we're going to be coming to you live on Wednesday, the 20th, same time, same place, 7 o'clock. And we will be featuring a discussion with Kelly about her role in the schools and what IEP is, what that means, what role parents can play, and what role the teachers and schools have to play. So we'll be diving in a little bit deeper into that. So we thank you all who joined us tonight. We come to you in love, integrity, and in the spirit of paying it forward, because like everyone has said here tonight, this is about a partnership, because we want to leave a legacy for our children and we don't want to leave any child behind. So thank you guys. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Nicole. And I look forward to seeing you guys next Wednesday.
Sure thing. So long,
Okay.
everyone. Bye-bye. Bye, Kelly.
Good night, guys.
Good night. How was that?
That was great.
We're still here? Okay.
Yeah, yeah, I just stopped the recording. So
Okay.
I thought that was really good.
That was good. That was
Awesome.
great.
Yes.
That was very.
Yeah, and I think that we hit some really good points, really good points. So, and we had Cecilia on who was really engaged. Like I have my iPad here so I can see the comments as they come in. There was another person on, Nicole, and I think she may have been related to you. Her last name was Norman. First names began with the T.
Oh,
Taja Norman? Okay.
Taja, I know Taja.
Oh, you do? Oh, okay.
Okay.
Okay, I thought maybe, I thought maybe she was related to Nicole because of the last name.
But there's not a lot of us, but.
Okay. Sorry, that's me. I shouldn't make assumptions. But yeah, she was on as well as Cecilia, but Cecilia sounds like she may need to talk to one of us at some point.
She probably sounds a little anxious. That sounds like anxiety there. So
yeah, but there were a lot of comments I didn't read because she was commenting all throughout the program. So at some point, maybe we can reach out to her because it sounds like she may need some support.
Yes.
So, but we just got to make sure in the webinar that we let people know how to reach us. Maybe we should have done that tonight too, but we'll follow up and do that the next time to let them know how they can reach out to us in case they have more questions and want to, take the conversation further.
Yeah.
Awesome. We can do that too.
This was recorded, right? It's going to be posted? Okay.
Yep, I will post it. Yeah. I'll have Claudia do it probably tomorrow.
Okay.
You know something? Also, one of the things that have been coming up is lately to me, just being out there with my kids playing football, is bullying. Hearing more and more about bullying on the bus and everything. And a lot of times these parents are feeling powerless about stuff like that as well. And again, they're being told that they don't have there's no recourse that the school can do or have any rights. That's not true.
Yeah, so, and I'm telling you, that is probably a separate webinar just on bullying.
You know what? And it probably is a separate webinar because and I love the fact that we have like different angles on everything because I'm hearing no COVID and I have another angle. So bullying for me, especially for special education, it's for all students, but I'm in a special ed classes. The way that children are isolated and in the classroom, the walls are put up, the separation, the turning the desk this way, that to me begins the bullying. That begins the bullying. The teacher is not realizing that you are making it known to the other students that this child is different and bad. And, so they might notice that, and then they might notice that the sneakers aren't as clean or the haircut isn't there, you know. So it's like kids, I always say kids kind of start to change their personality, kindergarten, if they go, because now they know that they're not the center of everybody's world. Now they know that everybody doesn't think they're cute and smart, and, you know, because now they're around these other children. But I would love for teachers to, educators, you know, I'm in that world. I don't know how we could do it. We can't always do it. But when we start to turn the desk away from the rest of the class, that's when we start to bring that attention in on that child from the other students.
Yeah, you begin to alienate that child. And then they feel that they're always on the defense because they feel that since the spotlight, a negative spotlight has been placed on them, that just follows them around the school.
And everybody sees it. Because at 5 and 6 and 7, their peers are 5, 6, and 7. So those are the people that are important to them. So that those children see isolation, it's like, you know, that stigma begins and the behaviors continue and they get worse. And I you know, I wish teachers could understand that part. You know, if I would rather a teacher take a break than take a walk, then turn that chair or put that divider up. Yeah. And then say to the other class, you see what so-and-so is doing? We don't do that, you know, and making them an example. I mean, it begins, I'm so sorry, somebody's calling me. It begins that bullying process, in my opinion, from what I'm seeing.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry, go ahead, Nicole, I'm sorry.
So that's why, in my opinion, that they need to be equipped. People needs to be equipped to continually learn, to better do their job. And I think a lot of times what everyone feels is, you know, oppression rolls downhill and it's transferred. And if one's working conditions is oppressive to that person, they'll transfer it on and on and on to whoever they have to work with. And then you have this vicious cycle of abuse and oppression and bullying and all that just exists. It becomes institutionalized. If we equip the people, if you equip those who handles the kids, they will equip the kids. And it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. But again, it's working, it's giving skills, the skills building is continuous training, is making people feel worth it. It's kind of hard, you know. I always tell people in counseling, and I remember sometimes they talk about parent issues and, you know, issues with mom and dad and stuff like that, and how they not love enough. And I had to remind them, I said, they can only love you with the love themselves. They can only, and so if you're not getting something from them, it's because of what they've received from others. But since you know and you're more enlightened, you do better. So what we have to do is the process of enlightenment. We have to do the process of helping them get to know and help find their way. So that's what it boils down to. And then it helps and stuff. You won't have that culture of just punitive culture and stuff like that exists in so many of our schools.